The natural state of the human being is hell.
The cold, the holding the positions, the workouts, they're going to suck as much as you allow them to suck. As much as you try to avoid or remove yourself from that situation, the more that you're going to be in discomfort.
Where my attention goes, that's what I experience. Where attention goes, energy flows. If you wiggle your right big toe right now, there it is, right? Before that, did it exist? We absolutely know what it takes to lose weight.
What's up, captains? Glad you could join me on today's episode because I sit down with my new friend, Jeff Lester, as he tells his extremely inspiring story of how he went from fat and unhappy to healthy, happy, productive, living life, helping others live and love their lives. So I first experienced the magic of Jeff Lester's Yin Yoga a few weeks ago at the Enlifted Lake House. And after that session with Jeff, this is what I did. I immediately walked up to him, gave him a big hug, said how grateful I was for the practice, and asked him if he would like to come on the Captain's Lifestyle podcast. Because I want all of you guys, the listeners, to experience the magic of what it is to be present and to feel and to reduce your stress. And before we get into that, speaking of reducing your stress, I would like to give you a word from one of our new sponsors, Bioptimizers, my favorite supplement brand, specifically my number one recommended supplement that I recommend almost everybody take, which there are very few supplements that I recommend everybody take. This Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers is one of those supplements because up to 80% of us are deficient in magnesium. Due to poor farming practices, our soil has been depleted of nutrients, including magnesium. And especially if you get your sweat on, as Jeff learned to do, and as you know I do, you need to be repleting your magnesium stores. What this does is it reduces stress significantly. It also improves the quality of your sleep, specifically deep sleep, so you're able to recover from workouts and injuries faster. It reduces headaches. It is fantastic for relieving muscle cramps and a whole bunch of other things. In fact, it plays a role in over 300 different enzymatic functions in the body. So it's not a cure-all. Like taking this won't stop all of the issues that you're facing, but it will help reduce stress, improve sleep. And if you reduce your stress and improve the quality of your sleep, those are two rising tides that raise all ships. So that is why I give Magnesium Breakthrough to all of my friends and family. I've got my parents on it. I've got all my best friends on it. Everyone in the Captain's Lifestyle program and who is a member of the Captain's Lifestyle crew is on it. It's great. So just experience it, try it out. And if you don't absolutely love it, they offer a 365-day, 100% money back guarantee. So you literally have nothing to lose and everything, including better sleep and a better life, stress-free life to gain. So try it out. Head to magbreakthrough.com, enter code Captain Morgan. Actually, that site will already apply code Captain Morgan, so you can get the hookup on that. Click the link in the description to take you there. Magnesium Breakthrough in combination with the magic of Jeff Lester's Yin Yoga practice and breath work. Oh, also, he is going to be hosting November's mastermind for the Captain's Lifestyle crew. So if you are not already a member of the Captain's Lifestyle crew, click the link in the description to download the Captain's Code, which will provide you with a link to join the crew, which is my private online men's community. We meet every single week, hop on a coaching and accountability call, and every month we host masterminds. So November's mastermind is going to be hosted by Jeff Lester. He's going to be facilitating a Yin Yoga and breathwork practice for you guys. So you get to experience what I experienced. So sign up. It's so worth it. Even for just this one mastermind alone, it will be worth your time. With all that being said, let's dive into today's episode with Jeff Lester. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. On my show today, got a very special guest who I had a very special experience with this morning. His name is Jeff, and I don't even know his last name. So, Jeff Lester is joining me on the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast today, and he is, I don't really know yet, and we're going to dive into what you do, but you provided me some fantastic Yin Yoga this morning that I'm excited to talk about. And before we talk about that, I'd like to give you guys a word from our sponsors. Number one, HVMN and their product Ketone IQ. which you have had a chance to try.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And we're going to be trying it again.
Perfect.
Live.
Little
shot bottle this time.
So we drink the whole thing?
Yeah. It's one serving. You had like 1.5 last time.
Okay.
So
cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to Ketone IQ. Thank you.
Stuff turns your brain on. Yeah. Just what I need.
Goes down smooth.
For that one does, yeah. That one's watered down a little bit. The one that you had is just pure rocket fuel.
Yeah.
So yeah, to get the hookup on anything from HVMN, specifically their Ketone IQ, head to hvmn.com, use code Captain Morgan 10. That will save you 10% on the world's best exogenous ketones. Turn your brain on, increase physical performance. Next up, this episode is brought to you by Lambs, which I am not wearing any of their clothing right now, but they are made out of silver, which is antimicrobial, and it blocks up to 99% of EMFs. So you are protected from electromagnetic fields. To get the hookup on anything from Lambs, head to getlambs.com, enter code Captain Morgan. That will save you 10%, I believe, on the world's healthiest apparel. It's like wearing antioxidants.
I'm going to check that out.
It's pretty cool. So all that being said, let's dive into it. Let's rock it. So first, I want to hear a little background on Jeff Lester. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Went to school there. I went to Georgia Tech. That's the university I went to. And man, growing up was a mixed bag. Like, how much do you want to hear about?
I want to hear the most important pieces. Who led you to this version of yourself, who you are here today? The chief.
I led me to this version of myself. I am creating and cultivating a connection with something bigger. So it's a co-creation. And I just want to preface that we're here in this beautiful place.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. Like how cool is it? We've got awesome, if you can hear background, they're amazing human beings having amazing conversations like us. So the vibes are really good. And as far as my childhood and background is concerned, what led me to this current evolution of myself, my expression, my way of being, was going on a profound journey of being who I wasn't in alignment with, like, so being out of alignment. And that was influenced by growing up in a household there's a lot of toxicity. I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 3. And I spent my childhood growing up with my mother and my sister. And I've since reflected that there's a lot of mental health issues, challenges in there. And that pushed me to first disconnect from myself. And the way that I disconnected from myself, the way that I would emotionally numb, was through eating. So you wouldn't notice it right now, but I used to weigh 300 pounds.
I was going to ask you about that. I noticed the stretch marks. I knew there was a story behind that.
Yeah.
Please tell us that story.
So food was my medication. There was a lot of medicating in my household. My mother, God bless her, has passed away. She passed away when I was 22, which is a very transformational experience and has greatly supported and facilitated my onward trajectory. And one of the things, so there was a lot of the mental health issues growing up, and being around that, what I recognize, and a lot of this is in retrospect, is the way I would disconnect myself from that, because there was an intensity there that I did not want to feel. I couldn't process it. And so the first drug that I turned to was food, and it was processed foods, and it was overeating. And of course, I grew up in a sedentary lifestyle that just did not facilitate me connecting with my body. And it ended up being me leaving my house, going to university, getting that space to start to discover who I was. And the big first thing was a weight loss journey, huge weight loss journey, from the age of 20 to 21, where I consider that my big physical transformation. And it was later that, that cracked the shell that lent itself to the more mental, emotional transformations of being, of really discovering who I am, finding myself for myself, experiencing that, and continuing that constant evolution. And so that, I mean, when I left home, I immediately started to already connect with people that were having different relationships with substance, and I was so averse to trying anything substance wise, like, whether it was alcohol or weed or any other drug. So I'm in a college environment, and all of that is around me. And one of the huge influences in my, I'd say I was 16 or so, was my uncle on my mother's side committing suicide. And before that, he was an alcoholic, and I just saw, and of course my mother's journey with pain medicine, being overprescribed for a decade, having cancer and all these things, just pushed me so far away to that. And so, I mean, and I didn't touch alcohol until I was 22, 23, after my mother passed away. And the reason I tell you that is because I was pushing away so much, so many different things, that eventually it caught up with me. When I did try drinking alcohol, I had a couple of experiences. One that took me into the depths of a lot of the things I hadn't processed, and it was like a meltdown. And I remember being with friends, and at this point, I had been with friends enough to see people with different relationships with substance. So not completely destructive relationships with substance. However, I had this experience. I was like, gosh, there's something that I need to heal, or there's something that I need to work on. And if you'd asked me before that, and even at that point, like, healing was you get a bruise and it goes away and you're healing. It was completely physical. And so I had no context for what emotional healing is. I've never been to therapy, and never been able to resolve, these experiences that I had over a long term through my childhood. And so that I was just completely ripe for that experience. And then coming off a huge weight loss transformation, discovering that I love moving my body, that I love to also to teach and coach people to move their body. One of the first things I really did for myself, and this is when I was in college, is I got certified to teach group fitness. And so I started teaching group fitness, and I loved it. And at this point, I was still on the path of following the archetype that was laid out for me from started with my grandfather on my mother's side. He was an engineer, and I felt like I needed to be smart if I was going to be overweight in early childhood. My first layer of armor was to be really smart and to be right. And that's,
if I don't have the body, I'm going to have the mind.
Exactly. So that was a layer of armor. I realized that in hindsight now, after all of this different dimensions of healing. But it was that staying in that field of, okay, so I've got to graduate, be an engineer. I've got to get a career in engineering, get a 6-figure salary. People will respect me. People will, there's a significance to it. And at the same time, the timeline starting to split, the trajectory starting to split, because I was quite unhappy in that field. And even though I recognize that I can apply myself and I can learn things and I can be successful academically, what I was failing to acknowledge and receive for myself was that this is not lending itself, contributing to my life. Like, this field, this pathway,
engineering,
engineering, the internships I did, I was totally unhappy in it. I just wasn't connecting. And so this is after I've lost the weight. So I've discovered something that really means something to me, and it was teaching group fitness. So when my mother passed away, I had a period of time where I was obviously processing that experience. I had just graduated from my 4-year degree, and I started teaching group fitness, and I started working at a running shoe company. I got really into running, loved that, connected with community over something I loved. And so I was starting to recognize the joys of life and starting to appreciate that and follow that path. So it was really me following my heart in a way that was lending itself to, okay, this is where I would like to go. I didn't quite fully download that yet. And so I continued my journey with engineering. I did internships, and I started a master's degree in France, thinking, okay, well, I love this field of wellness, and starting to work on self-development within myself and the fitness. And so I thought, okay, well, I've got this engineering degree. I'll get a master's degree, and I'm going to design clothes like that are really good for for fitness, or shoes that are really good for fitness. And so that program was in France, and I started that, and I was studying stuff that was completely out of left field compared to what I thought I would be studying. I was studying like aircraft aluminum and material science for cars and things like that. And it was just, I got to the point where I was so tired of pushing this boulder uphill, and it was starting to become more and more apparent to me that this is a field, and a field meaning a career that is so uninteresting to me. And I felt so out of integrity, and I lost what I was doing with willpower before. I could no longer do. It was out of alignment enough for me to recognize, okay, so I've compromised my integrity by not showing up in my classes, not doing what I need to do to be successful at this. And that hurts already. And at the same time, when I was in France, there was no group fitness scene. So I wanted that, and I created it, and I started inviting people to the local gym, and we started doing boot camps, and we started doing running, just running together. And I had a friend, she ended up teaching yoga. And I realized, okay, this is what I really like to do. And there was a day, and this is a point in my timeline where things changed, where I had been in class, and this was for that master's degree, and I was so overwhelmed and in a negative headspace about where I was with it all. And I was walking back from the class building to my dorm, and I was looking down at the ground, and I was just feeling terrible. And then I looked up, and I looked over to my right, and there was a soccer field where I gave boot camp classes, and we bonded as a community and had so much fun. And it was this moment where I was in this negative headspace, and I looked over, and I saw this expansive possibility of, this is what I love to do. The Buddhists call this satori, and it absolutely shredded that negative frame of mind that I was in. And it was the direct context in terms of, this is the path I'm on. This is the path that's possible. And I looked at that, and I was like, I finally gave myself permission to do that, because there was so much pride and ego wrapped up in being this intellectual, being smart, this career, this status, etc., that I wasn't willing and allowing myself to follow my dreams, because in my mind, being a fitness instructor wasn't good enough, or, it wasn't, or a coach, it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And so finally, in that moment where it was so clear and so distinct, within 5 more steps on that walk, I had decided that I'm quitting my engineering program. Like, it was a stake, it was a fork in the ground. I was like, I'm done with this. I am shifting trajectory. And now what was really cool is, while I was living in France, I had the opportunity to travel to some other places, and I visited a friend who was living in London, UK. And I fell in love with London. There's tons of group fitness studios there. The health scene is alive and vibrant there. And I thought to myself, all right, I'm done here. I would like to move to London, and I would like to teach group fitness. So when I made that decision in that moment, and this is what like fascinates me about continuing to make these decisions based on where the heart wants to go, where what is aligned, is that I got so much support, and it was so easy and effortless to take all the steps necessary to make that happen. I would say that I usually turn the other way from admin. I usually turn the other way from filling forms out to get a visa and apply to a different college, and all these things that were required of me to get a visa to live in the UK. And I did it, and it was just easy, one thing after another. Everything fell in line. I was able to work for the university after I had quit my program. They let me work there as like a counselor for the incoming freshmen. And in that transition phase, everything was smooth sailing. And this is like this, there's something, I'll use the word karmic, or I'll use the word, there was a sense of destiny about this, because as soon as I got to the UK, within 2 days, I walked into the yoga studio that, everything would change for me. Because while I was in university and school there, I was clearly reckoning with this fact that I'm doing something that makes me unhappy. I feel like there's a possibility to be happy and experience life and enjoy life. and I was missing it. And it felt like the whole of a donut. It just felt empty. And I was reading all these self-development books, these psychology books. I was reading books on human behavior and optimization around health, nutrition, body, mind, you get it. And I'd yet to connect the link to spirit, and I was still really figuring out what is this healing piece that I need. Like I've got baggage. Like I recognize that I had parts of my past, like my uncle's suicide, my relationship with my mother and her death, and really ultimately being the deciding factor in her passing on, because at the end of her life, it got to the point where, okay, she was in a coma and on life support, and it was up to me to decide whether she would, be kept alive or not. And I look, I'm really grateful because she prefaced, if that ever came to fruition, I knew which decision to make, and still there was a guilt around it, there was a heaviness around it,
Wow.
etc. And so I still have this gray cloud looming, and also this missing piece. And I'm reading these books, and they're cultivating an awareness in me of what is possible. And what it did is it even served to highlight the negativity that I was experiencing. So it actually benefited me in a sense that it tilted me to the point where I had to make that change. I had to make that change for me. I had to change the trajectory I was going on. So that pursuing the information and everything wasn't supporting the transformation, but it was bringing up the pain enough in order to act out of a place of, I've got to change something. And so that all these little things ended up getting me to where I was, into the UK, and I started practicing yoga at the studio called the House of Yoga. And I walked past their studio one day, and they had an offer on their billboard, 30 days of yoga for 30 pounds, $45 at the time. And I was like, I'm going to come to the studio every day. I'm going to pay £1 per class. I was in that mindset of, I'm going to get my money's worth. And what I was not ready for, I was ready for it. And what I was not expecting was the complete and utter transformation, that community once again showing up in my life in a beautiful way, and how much I'd love the yoga practice, and especially the way the yoga practice was captured here. Because yoga, what we think of often of yoga is the physical part of it, the going in and doing postures, right? Yoga is thousands of years old, and it's a transformational science. It's a science for evolving consciousness within the human being. Those physical postures are a small part of that. There's self-inquiry. There is training the senses, training the mind as an aspect of yoga. There's meditation. There's finding the stillness. And so I recognized very quickly, especially with the influence of my community and the friends that I had gotten there, is that there's a vibration, there's a quality that I can seek, and I can use this yoga practice to facilitate evolving and bringing up in me. And so I started recognizing, okay, awareness coming back. My relationship with food was dysfunctional. Because I got into a healthy place, I tilted to the other side. So it's interesting. It's like that statement, wherever you are, there you go.
Wherever you go, there you are.
Wherever you go, there you are. Exactly.
John Kabat-Zinn.
Wherever I go, there I am. And I experienced that with how I transferred my numbing over from eating to exercise. So I started, there it was, right? So then I would overeat and then over exercise, and I would be in this negative mental headspace about, I binged, I ate so much that night, and then wake up feeling like shit the next day, like a food hangover, totally. And so this yoga practice started to highlight this dysfunction happening in my life. And that was one of the first things, like, I've got to heal this now. There's some real pain showing up. And because I talked about it to people, because I was in a community that felt good enough, that I felt safe enough to be vulnerable and open up about this challenge. But I have to express that growing up in the field of engineering, and that very left brain intellectual space, like
the pinnacle of left,
right? So the ability for me to express from an emotional perspective what I'm feeling, what's challenging me, and also this part of me that needed to be right and needed to be perfect, that was baked in from childhood, that facade started to crack. So there's this opportunity now to get to a deeper level of healing and to understand that there's aspects of my life that I would like to see differently and experience differently. And this practice presents a possibility for me to grow and to evolve into that. And so I fell in love with the yoga practice. I fell in love with the all the potential that if I commit myself to my practice, then change is inevitable. It's like we try to solve our problems, and I was trying to do this so long from an intellectual place. I was trying to think my way out of the healing I needed to do. If I just try this habit, if I just try this thing, and I kept hitting a wall, and I kept, self-sabotaging, which I think a lot of people resonate with, especially when we read about it and we know it's like it's this simple. You just think differently, right? So if those deep unconscious rooted things from our childhood are showing up, it's always going to be head against a brick wall until the energy starts to move. And what yoga does is it helps move energy. And that's what we were doing today with the yin practice. And the yin practice came in a couple of years after I started my yoga teacher training journey. I trained to become a yoga teacher. I knew that I wanted to teach yoga. And it was like, I felt like this thing, it didn't have a ceiling. Whereas with engineering, I felt a clear ceiling, and it felt like it was putting pressure on me. And with yoga, I felt like however this wants to express through me, I'm game. It was a true commitment to myself through this practice that I'm okay. Things are going to be great. I've got this practice. I can lean on it. And however it wants to evolve, yoga is like, it's like we're all cups, and we're all cups of different shapes and sizes. And yoga is the water that fills the cup. It'll take that shape and that size to suit that person. If we find a non-dogmatic approach to practice, meaning set yourself free from it has to look like this, it has to be like this, you have to do it this way, otherwise you're wrong. Otherwise you're not doing it right. So there's a lot of that in the self-development field. There's a lot of that in the spiritual development field. And so, yoga started connecting me with different dimensions of my mind. And the next thing I did for myself that was so powerful was I committed myself to a meditation practice. A daily, I'm going to show up. I've given myself the time and the space to sit for 20 minutes. And the way my mind was then, 5 minutes would drive me up the wall. 5 minutes would feel like an eternity. I had said it. I had expressed it to the community. I had made a vocal commitment to others that I was going to do this. And so I showed up for it. And after a few months of the meditation practice, wow, huge. Being able to see the architecture of my mind, being able to create space between identifying with the thoughts. And it's like a lot of what we're doing here in this enlifted community around story work, around getting clear on how our languages can be influencing us for better and for worse. It's like the meditation practice is cultivating the awareness to be able to see that unfolding and recognize, okay, I can create space in my life. I can be a response to the stimulus rather than a reaction to the stimulus. And so that was hugely transformational. So I mean, honestly, what got me here was getting to that place. And then I was on fire. Like I was, okay, I'm going to keep following and trusting everything that's interesting to me. All the different modalities. I mean, for years now, I've been on that journey of learning different modalities, teaching, taking what I've learned and integrated and teaching it with others. And very quickly I recognized, okay, standing in front of a class and teaching shapes, while that's interesting to me, I love to facilitate workshops. I love to do the coaching. I love to facilitate training, because the yoga teacher training is a hugely transformational experience in of itself. So I got that gift. I got the gift of people who were empowering me, giving me opportunities, and I took them, and I just kept saying yes. And eventually I met Mark England, who's our mutual friend here, at a yoga teacher training, and he was facilitating story work, and I leaned in hard. I was like, what is this? Because this is connecting some excellent dots that I've been very curious about, how our words influence our life, getting things written down, looking at the story, changing, reframing from a very powerful integrated way with the breath, with the nervous system. And yeah, man, so that's in a nutshell, like a very condensed form of then to now, and all of the insights and all the transformations, that drip feed of the wisdom and the consistency to practice have gotten me to a place where I know what I am. I know at my deepest personality what wants to express, right? To teach, to share these gifts of transformation, lifestyle, mental, physical, emotional, right? And to help others on their journey of healing as well. And to bridge this gap between where we stand as human beings at this very essential time in our timeline as a collective, that now we're opening up. Now these ancient traditions have been mixed with, have been fused with, new insights, new language, new way of presenting it, that it's accessible to all of us. And the world that we create, the humanity that we create, the experience that we create, one individually for ourselves and as a collective when we go on that journey, that's the world I want to see. That's the world I want to be a part of. So that's what I'm living. Thanks for asking, man.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here.
Mm.
So I want to bring it back a bit. So the moment you decided to quit your pursuit of engineering and this false sense of self,
Yes.
that was a very clear decision for you. And after that, you mentioned that everything got easier, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. We skipped past the weight loss journey, which is something that a lot of people are struggling with. And I imagine that's a lot of people's first step, as it was for you.
Yeah.
So was there a decision, a specific moment, or a collection of moments that you can remember that was like, this is why I need to change? And what was that process like?
Absolutely. Huge. So as I shared, leaving the toxic environment that I was in at home, that I was unable to mentally and emotionally cope with, greatly supported the change that I and what I believe is this is who I am, this version of like physically wanting to move, loving to be, like in a relationship with my body that is around movement. That was my natural state. And that was being masked and covered up. And I was disconnected from that. And so changing the environment, recognizing that, and that's a huge awareness. That's an awareness that came from a lot of self-work. And if I can help anybody recognize and wake up to the fact that what are the aspects of your life that's manifesting right now, whether it's through you or around you, that is contributing to the disconnection, that is contributing to the being out of balance, because that's what overweight is. We all have our natural healthy weight, and if we exceed that, then we are out of balance, right? There's a disconnection there. Or if it's on the other side of it, if it's starving yourself, right? There's the disconnection. So getting into an environment that was more conducive of being in my own space, being with myself, being around people that were more encouraging. One of the huge shifts that happened was I started spending a lot of time with my childhood best friend. We went to college together, his family, and his sister-in-law overweight, and she started this weight loss program at the school. And I saw her go on her journey, and I started, we would go to workouts together at 5 a.m. And I did it as like, I was overweight, she's overweight. We can support each other in this. Like, we can hold each other accountable. And for me, it was fun. And I recognize that collaborating and accountability is huge in creating next steps. And it can support that. Of course, when we're overweight, and this is what I strive to remember about being overweight so that I can speak to people from the experience, is that yes, we absolutely know what it takes to lose weight. Eat less, eat healthier, exercise more. Like, if you're overweight, those are the three things that are contributing to being overweight 98% of the time, is our relationship with food and our relationship with movement. And so recognizing that there's this obstacle to making those changes, and that's coming from the unconscious. It's like, that's the thing that we wrestle with, that requires a change in the environment, or the change in the way we approach that. So the yoga practice is really good for moving the energy, so that, and when I say energy, is moving the things that are deep inside that we cannot necessarily rationalize, that are contributing to the self-sabotage, right? And so the self-sabotage will be the continuing to binge eat, the numbing through food, that I had that stressful experience, and so I go to food in order to not feel that. And then I overeat, and then I'm critical that I overate, and I go to food to numb that, right? So it's that vicious cycle. And so the decision there was to show up for my friend, and then eventually I got into it, and the next semester I committed to the same weight loss program, and I found that I really love to move, and I found that my competitiveness or my desire to want progress and to go for it found a home and a safe place in the environment those coaches were creating and the consistency of it. And for the first time, I was able to see a result in my body. So I kept showing up, and I saw a result in my body. And after that, I was off to the races because I instead of intellectually knowing it, and this is again, this is a super important bridge to build that I want anybody who's struggling with a self-sabotage, and it's like, what it takes to change. However, the intellectual knowing is different than the embodied experience of it. So we've got to do whatever it takes, and sometimes it takes, the pain has to reach a certain threshold, the emotional pain, whatever it is, to make that commitment to oneself, to go through whatever process is necessary to recover, or to engage in that experiential change. Meaning, I did the things necessary to see weight coming off my body, and when I saw that, it was then embodied, meaning I got it at the experiential level. I do this, and I show up to this way of life, and these behaviors and these actions, and this is the result I get. So before, that was in my mind, right? And after, with the support of community, with the support of accountability, with the support of coaches that knew what they were doing, I got to get myself in the position to know that at the experiential level. And when we know something at the experiential level, the success rate of being activated in whatever it takes to make that happen is huge. That's in relationships, that's in our relationship with ourselves, with business, with diet, with exercise, whatever it is. Getting to that place of experiential knowing, and whatever it takes to take the action, to see the progress happening, to receive the feedback at a deeper level. Because a lot of the times we're trying to think, and I was trying to think my way, and the energy of the mind is nothing, it pales in comparison to the energy of emotion. And so my emotional body would keep sucking me back into the old patterns and behaviors until I was the pain or the desire. So we can be motivated, one, by pain, or we can be motivated by curiosity. And so maybe it's a little bit of both, but the desire to change was enough to be the impetus to reach that next level of experiential wisdom that it's like, okay, I've got it. I now know what it takes to make that transformation. And I just kept going with it. I kept running, I kept exercising, kept making changes to my diet. And eventually I got myself into that different dysfunctional relationship with food. Yeah.
That's where we're going now.
Okay.
So by the way, the collaboration and accountability, that's fucking huge.
Yeah.
Right. That I have a men's community, an online men's community. We meet once a week. The call is today, actually, in a few hours. And just seeing people, like, because once somebody else shares their story or something that they're going through, it gives the other people permission to speak up and say, oh, I actually have a similar problem to that. Right. And so it gives them permission to first acknowledge that, and then to collaborate with them, and to hold each other accountable. And so I just wanted to say that's it for making change, making the decision, and then being held accountable, and then collaborating with other people. Yeah. So the link to join the Captain's Lifestyle crew will be in the description of this podcast. Now to transition to one unhealthy habit of eating to another, of being addicted to exercise, which a lot of people have been there. I imagine our mutual friend, Chase Tollison. Yeah. So he has a quote, and he says a lot of people who go to the gym are using exercise as an alcoholic uses a bottle of tequila. translate it to, a lot of people are exercising to or as somebody who's overweight uses food.
Yeah.
So same thing. So how did you break yourself out of this addictive tendency to exercise?
So again, and that's it. It becomes self-medicating. And then is this functional or is this dysfunctional? Is recognizing that there's the awareness to that. And awareness, it's like it's what's unknown to start shedding in on that. There's an honesty with oneself that comes from that, and a vulnerability, like the vulnerability of being able to recognize and own up to, okay, this behavior is dysfunctional. This behavior is not contributing to my life. And then recognizing, okay, so what can I do to that? And that can be the outreach. That can be joining the community or being part of asking. Yeah. So the humility, vulnerability is the part. And a lot of times we got to get broken down.
So yeah, so I find this a lot with men, especially
men.
Dude, that and I've been there.
Yeah.
We think we have to do it all ourselves, and it's like it makes us weak or feminine to reach out or ask for support. So how did you make that decision?
Okay, so when I started recognizing the dysfunctional relationship with food and really body image, like I became obsessed with attaining a certain body image after losing weight. It's like, okay, now I want to see my abs, and now I'll punish myself if I eat too much by running 10 miles. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this toxic relationship internalized with it. So it's getting to that level of awareness, right? And then I was in a community, and at this point, this was the yoga, and this is a deeper, in my experience, it was a deeper layer. So losing the weight and changing the behaviors to get to losing weight so the emotional relationship with eating was a different layer than the attachment to body image. So it shifted, the energy shifted. So whatever was happening in my unconscious, in my mind, latched onto something else, but it was a deeper layer. And it was exactly that, is sitting in a circle with mostly women, because it's yoga, and mostly being in that space that is conducive to being able to share and owning up. So there's that, okay, it's my time to share. Heart rate kicks up. I've got this thing I want to talk about. Do I want to talk about it? Am I worthy of it? It's in it. Like if we want to get to the root of it, worthiness, especially what would keep me from sharing is my problem good enough to present to the group? Will I be judged? And it's like, am I judging myself for whatever I'm going to present to the group? And in a big transformation, again, was the willingness in me to share my frustration in the group about how I was self-sabotaging with food and exercise and overeating and binge eating and waking up with food hangovers. And then the need to, okay, well, I know what fixes that. I'll just go run 10 miles, right? And so I started sharing that, and I started recognizing how many people have a very similar experience. And I would say I would clip it at 80%, 4 out of 5 people have some dysfunctional relationship with food or body image, like a huge number.
Yeah.
And we know that that's rooted in something deeper, something from childhood, some limiting belief or something, in the energy of that is manifesting upward as this dysfunctional relationship with whatever it is. So one of the huge milestones, or one of the huge points in my experience of sharing my experience, the willingness to share, was being in that group with the yoga studios, a 40-day group, right? So this is where I also committed to my meditation program, my meditation practice. And one session after the session is one where I was talking about what was challenging me, and really being transparent about my frustration with it and my frustration with myself, and how that brought the group together on this, like, wow, to see how many others are experiencing this too and would like change too. One of the teachers came up to me and says, and this, what she said, Kylie, what she said really set a new trajectory for me. She said, when you speak, people listen. And what a beautiful thing to acknowledge somebody from that, right?
Especially somebody who thought of themselves or their problems as unworthy of
Exactly.
being listened to.
Yes. Yes. And so huge thing to acknowledge me for that. And then I was able to, instead of pushing that away, I received that. And because I had again experienced it. So it was an acknowledgement that I had experienced, and for her to bring light to it gave me this new like gear of, okay, so I have a story that's worth sharing. Like, okay, that seed was planted, and that seed is continuing to grow and flourish to this day. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I really want to continue diving into your background and what led you here, and my laptop battery is dwindling. So let's talk about what we experienced today, what you led us through, the
Amazing.
Yin Yoga.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that I want to get into from that. We'll start with, let's see, I'll leave it up to you. Which topic would you be most excited to discuss? The act of receiving, which we kind of just talked about, you receiving that, you know, or exploring how to explore the sensations of holding the movements. We could talk about balance in, you know, a whole lot of different things, the yin and the yang and everything. Talk about this. I do want to talk about what it's like when meditating or trying to be present and your mind is wandering. What we all experience, every human being experiences this. And you said something that really helped myself draw my awareness back into my body. So let's actually start with this.
Okay.
Which is so during the Yin Yoga, it's important to be present in the body, right? So part of that is keeping your focus in the now instead of worrying about what happened last night, which was wild, which we don't have to get into on this podcast, or it could be, worrying about what you have coming up this next week and checking your emails, whatever. And so you said something along the lines of, if you find your mind wandering, invite it to come back into the now, or explore the option of bringing your awareness back into this moment. And for me, that was a kind of a light bulb moment, because usually it's bring your awareness back to your breath or whatever it is. It's like a command as opposed to an invitation. So talk to me about, or to us about, how you learned that. Like what, who or what did you learn that from?
Okay. So the invitation is really potent because it reminds us that where our attention is a choice, right?
Yes.
So we get to experience, when we become aware to that possibility, the free will universe. Everything becomes a choice. How I show up in this moment becomes a choice. In recognizing it's practices like meditation are incredibly humbling, because I've started to realize how much my mind wanders and how often I'm disconnected from the present moment, let alone the incredible experience of being present, meaning my attention is centered here in what's going on through my senses and even deeper. So one of the things that showed up for me as I started this journey, especially when I was reading a lot of self-development books, was the importance of the present moment. And I remember specifically one day I was standing in the living room, my dad was in the kitchen, and we were talking between the two rooms. And I said, I keep seeing in these books that the importance of being present. And my dad goes, sure, the present moment is everything. And I immediately rebuttal with, well, I'm here, aren't I? How could I not be present? And that was a stage of me being fully disconnected from the realization that my mind can be elsewhere, and therefore my attention can be elsewhere. Therefore, my experience is out of the present moment. So it's about experiencing the present moment. So it's in this moment, this breath. Can we all take a breath right now? Feeling the air on the skin, and using these tools of mindfulness to recognize there is a dimension of this human being that can direct attention. And so where my attention goes, that's what I experience. Where attention goes, energy flows. If you wiggle your right big toe right now, there it is, right? Before that, did it exist? Is the question, is a valid question. I know it sounds out there and very like, what is, of course it exists, but did it really exist in the mechanics of consciousness and experiencing the present moment? Before our attention goes to something, or where our attention goes, that's what we're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And the Yin Yoga practice is okay. So all yoga asana, yoga movement practices are rooted in the wisdom that if we move our body in certain shapes, then we're stressing tissues, and there's an energetic component to that, and there's an influencing of the energy body, which would be what we want to influence in order to manifest outwardly experiences like health and wellness. So we get again into the intellectual matter of, okay, I have this disease, sickness, illness, overweight, etc. And we intellectualize that, and we try to solve that from a reductionist point of view, that if I do this, then I get that result. As opposed to what the ancient esoteric sciences teach us, and the embodiment of them, is that if I can influence at the energetic level, then all of that manifests upwardly towards health. Like the natural state of a human being is health, right?
Say that one more time.
The natural state of the human being is health. So if we recognize that with our intellect, that we can direct our attention, and that requires awareness, and the meditation practice cultivates this awareness. So it's that, okay, being with myself enough to recognize, oh, my mind is just all over the place, and there's another place that I can take my attention. I can take it to the body, I can take it to the breath. So the invitation is like, as a guide that's leading that experience, I want to support that other person in creating a space for their attention to be welcomed into the present moment. Because it can become ordinary, or it can become repetitive to say, okay, bring your mind to this. So when there's an invitation, that means there's a possibility, and where there's a possibility, there's a space, and where there's a space, attention can go there, energy can go there. All that, again, we're talking about it, which is important to recognize that the talking about it is a degree removed from the experience. So the next phase of this would be to go practice Yin Yoga and see what it's like to come back to your body, come back to your breath. The Yin Yoga as a practice is a very potent, very powerful practice, because it slows us down, and we are then confronted with our whatever's there, energy-wise, mental-wise, physical-wise. Most people start a yoga practice at the physical level. I started my yoga practice, it was power yoga, it was movement yoga, it was strong yoga. It was from this place of, I'm a marathon runner, I want to stretch my body so that I can be a better runner, right? And then yoga became purely physical for me. Mm-hmm. The thing is that yoga works. The asana, the physical postures work at the energy level. So transformation is guaranteed with consistency of that practice. So it inevitably worked to connect my mind to my body. Inevitably worked to reveal that I can manage my nervous system through my breath, or the energy is another word for nervous system. So the Yin Yoga, as opposed to let's say a vinyasa, a strong movement-based practice, where anything that, whether we're throwing weights around or doing a strong yoga practice, we can call that yang, meaning the expression within the qualities of that practice are outwardly oriented, working on strength, working on movement, and expressing as, more outwardly. Yin is the complement to that, and we always need both of them. And this is the wisdom of the Taoist yin yang symbol, that you see the opposite always seated within the other. So they're always there. And the coming back to balance is the recognizing that we have the possibility to influence the qualities with our attention. And in today's society, in today's world, there is now shifting to this reintegration of the yin and of the feminine in a healthy way. Because for a long time it's been toxic yin, toxic feminine expressing, and toxic not, just the toxic things expressing. And so what the yin practice invites us to do, it puts us in a place where we hold the poses for more time. So we're on the floor, we're doing poses that work on our joints, our back, our spine, our hips, mainly our hips. And there's first of all, the physiological level, I can appeal to people at the physiological level. I could say this is great exercise for your joints. As you get older, you need to exercise your joints. Otherwise, they stiffen up, fascia builds around, you lose mobility. And then what mobility is automatically directly related to your health and well-being as you age. So you want to address the physical level. What I'm super excited about, obviously, is the deeper, more metaphysical experiences that come from this and from meditation. We can experience plant medicine dimensions of consciousness by getting into that place of stillness. Now it's more effort, more showing up for that to experience those levels of consciousness where the present moment expands, meaning that I've put my attention into the present moment, and where our attention goes, energy flows. Where our energy flows, expands. If you sit here and look at one of these rocks that's just in front of us, you might take it at face value, but if you stare at it for a couple of minutes, then you start to notice all the different dimensions and curvatures of the rock, the little divots in the rock, and the texture of the rock, the weight of the rock, the temperature of the rock. It's expanding. The qualities of that rock are expanding. The present moment is infinite. So if we continue to put our attention into the present moment, we continue to expand into the infiniteness of the present moment. And it's I get like this movement in my hands is like it's vertical. It's infinite in all directions. So that is, again, we're talking about it, which is a degree removed from the experience. Yin yoga, or any of these practices that are slower, put us into the experience.
So I want to continue into the presence of it, because part of that presence, and I love how you put this, is explore the physical sensations and get curious about it. I think coming at it from that standpoint, as opposed to just gritting through it,
yes,
is so much more interesting.
Which
to
is
people.
A yang quality. To grit through it would be yang.
As opposed to surrendering to whatever it is.
Yes.
And I talk about this all the time when I have clients go into the cold. They're trying to avoid the feeling.
Yeah.
Right? The more that you can surrender to it, the more that you will learn about yourself, and the more that it will be an enjoyable experience. It's the cold, the holding the positions, the workouts, they're going to suck as much as you allow them to suck. As much as you try to avoid or remove yourself from that situation, the more that you're going to be in discomfort.
Exactly.
So talk about the exploration and the curiosity of holding these poses.
Yes. Okay. So this is, again, it's the mechanics of recognizing where our attention goes. So if I am in the cold water and I'm resisting it, I'm giving attention to that resistance, and to the story that the cold is anything but the sensation. I'm giving energy to I want to get out. I'm giving energy to this sucks, whatever it is. Same thing with the yin pose. It's so similar. It's in terms of what it does at the mental, emotional level, is it puts us into a place of discomfort. I guide people to get into a place of, how can you find a place where you can stay and be in that sensation? So these poses aren't necessarily comfortable. However, one of my favorite quotes from Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is the guy that brought us the hero's journey. He articulated that every myth has an archetype, and it's all internalized, and we're just mirrors reflecting it back outward. And so we can go on a hero's journey, which we've expressed my own here. one of his quotes that really resonated with me is, any feeling felt all the way through. What is that? It's bliss. Any feeling felt all the way through is bliss. And so so the recognition is that this is the sensation I'm feeling. I'm going to go straight into that. And that requires an awareness that I've got to direct my attention, or I can invite my attention with curiosity into that. Curiosity is the antidote to judgment. So the resistance to the pose is the judgment that it's bad, or the judgment that there's something about it that I'm rejecting. So when we judge, we reject something. And I say that the true matrix that we talk about is judgment. The matrix is judgment in life, is to judge right, wrong, good, or bad, instead of being in the experience and allowing yourself to go into it. When we allow ourselves to transcend judgment, and curiosity is a really good tool for that, we invite in our being that wants to express through us. Then co-creation happens. What is this soul? What is this Jeff personality that has decided to come into this body and to live and to express in this life and this time want to manifest? What is the desire, right? And if I can approach that with curiosity and not with judgment, then I'm allowing the flow of that energy. Judgment serves to block it. And what a lot of the time we do is we go into the yin pose and we judge it, and we immediately resist that experience and say, okay, I put, walls around that. And then therefore, because I've put the walls up through judgment, I've limited to what I can perceive and experience in that moment. So the invitation and the curiosity is about creating the space to experience more of what's there. And it's my personal experience that bliss is, in fact, any feeling felt all the way through, whether it's anger, fear, guilt, grief, cold, intense stretch in your hip joint, muscle, lifting a heavy weight over your head,
muscle fatigue.
It's like, wow, what a hack for life to be able to enjoy whatever is there in this present moment.
That is what I experienced this weekend, and the Yin Yoga practice just solidified that. It's like, whatever I am experiencing, I'm at peace.
And be choosing, like the choosing of that experience, to be choosing and willing that to be in that experience, right? Anything else is resisting it. So peace then becomes, if I become aware that there's something out of peace in my being, then that is the opportunity for me to invite in peace and to be choosing that way of being. That's what we get in the free will universe when we access the present.
It goes back to being out of balance.
Yes.
When you were overweight.
Exactly.
And when you were addicted to exercise. It's an imbalance. Okay, so change of location. We are now nice and cozy. Inside on the couch. And we're going to be diving back into the last few topics that I wanted to make sure that we covered today, because it just felt right to not leave this for the part 2.
Good.
So, giving is receiving. And once people truly understand that, they unlock abundance. Correct?
That's correct.
Talk to us about this epiphany that at least I had today when you said that is the key to abundance, that giving is receiving.
Especially this piece of receiving, because it comes back to the orientation of the Western mind, Western society, which is very outwardly oriented, and so would be of output or giving, right? And what I recognize through yin practice, body work, through my own journey of connecting with myself and my emotional body, is that there's an experience to gratitude. So we would practice gratitude by, one of the practices is to write things down that you're grateful for. Say thank you. And that, again, the piece that's really important about this is to be curious. I'm going to say, be curious, please. The dimension of an intellectual understanding of something versus the experience of it. When we are getting into the dimension of experience, we're receiving, and it's an energy of receiving, as in, I get to feel and experience that with my body. We might start off thinking, and this is my case, okay, I've heard that a gratitude practice is good for me. I've heard it'll make me happier. It'll make me more grateful. So I go about writing things I'm grateful for, and things I think I should be grateful for. And keyword think. So I'm in my head at that point, and I'm not connecting with the juice. The juice is the feeling of gratitude. Gratitude I directly associate with receiving. Gratitude is the feeling, the experience of receiving something. And so there's a law, a spiritual law, an energetic law. And these kinds of laws are difficult to, as somebody who's very intellectual and rational will have a difficult time accepting this, because it's more about the experience of what I'm talking about than the way I articulate it. Because I've said it, when we're talking about it, we're one dimension at least removed away from the experience of it. So gratitude I bring up because that is, then there's a feeling associated with that, and we can put our attention towards that feeling and to receive that feeling because it's there. If I say I'm grateful for something and I believe it in my mind, then there's another possibility to go into the feeling of that gratitude for that thing rather than thinking about gratitude of that thing. And this law that I was talking about, it's divine reciprocity. The true giving and receiving happens in reciprocal fashion, meaning there's no disconnection between the two. There's no just giving. There's no just receiving. It's happening as an exchange.
When you're actually giving. Because a lot of people give with the intention of something.
Right.
Like, you're going to pay me back later, or I do this for you, and then I expect you to do something for me. Yes. So
it's conditional.
Yeah.
And that becomes an obstacle to the receiving, which is ironic, right? Because it's then when that person either doesn't fulfill that condition, there's resentment or something that shows up, or when they do, it was expected. And so there's a block from truly receiving that.
Yeah.
And so this practice of being in a space of having my attention placed on the present moment, in Yin Yoga, right? We're putting our attention to a sensation, and we're playing with the idea, with the curiosity of, whatever I feel fully, there's bliss. There's an opportunity to experience bliss. Now, of course, within the mechanics of the Yin Yoga practice, there's practicing with skill and practicing understanding what's functional and what's serving the body, because we don't want to injure the body. I don't want to blow my knee out and feel blissful, because there could be the pain of that and then feeling that all the way through. So staying functional in the body and just cultivating this practice of being present and bringing attention to that experience, and then starting to recognize, okay, I like to use the word gratitude, and that if I can truly feel grateful, as in experience the gratitude, then I'm receiving it in that moment. And then what you were talking about is to give from that place, already grateful. And what happened is, so earlier today, you gave me some of the liquid ketones.
The ketones, yeah.
And I received it. And there's an energy, it's like a recognition that there's an energy to that. So you're listening might recognize that you're giving, and it's not being received. And so that giving runs dry because it's conditional. And then something else will replace it because it's not sustainable. Divine reciprocity, there's an infinite amount of energy to there. That's abundance. There's an infinite amount of, and there's an infinite well to tap into of that quality of giving, because the receiving, the energy exchange already happens in that moment. When we're connecting with somebody that's able to receive, we feel that much more easily.
Yeah.
And so your giving to me, my receiving your giving was already fulfilled. Like, it was satisfying for you to give.
Yes.
Because it was received.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's what I want to touch on now is I have had a difficult time receiving, and this was one of the major turning points for me, is understanding that when I give, in order for me to fully like feel that gratitude, the other person must receive it. And not like actually receive it, like, oh, thank you, like I appreciate this. And then I flip that around to me. It's like, okay, when somebody's giving me a compliment or offering me this thing, whatever it is, if I reject that or say no thank you, I am not accepting their gift. So I am taking away from their gratitude. And so for me, having a difficult time receiving, now it's like, okay, dummy, like you can not only benefit from this person's gift, whatever it is, but you can also give them the gift.
Yes,
by
exactly,
receiving.
exactly.
And it's just this perfect synergistic loop of giving is receiving and receiving is giving. And for me, that was like, and so when we ended the Yin Yoga practice in there with the thank you, I found myself just taking a big deep breath in, and then literally the whole exhale was thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because you mentioned when something pops in your head that you're grateful for, just say thank you. And I was literally going through anything that popped into my head, and I was like, I am grateful for all of this. Like all of this is a part of my experience, which what makes my life great. So of course I am thankful for everything. So I was like, the feeling of the cold grass on my feet, the whatever it is, mist, or I don't know what the technical term is, that was raising off the water, just witnessing that and the different spirals that the sunrise, the everything, all of the people, all of the food, like everything. It was just thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then that's why I instantly came up and gave you a hug. It's like you gave that gift of gratitude to me because I allowed myself to receive, and I understood from your standpoint as a fellow coach and facilitator myself, I understood that that was very gratifying for you to facilitate that process. And I noticed that, gave you a hug. Yeah, came outside, gave you the ketones. It's like, yes, just receive and give. And speaking of giving, thank you for giving your time
My
to come on
pleasure.
this podcast. This was a fantastic conversation, and I imagine a lot of the listeners will get tremendous value from not just hearing the words that you're saying, but I hope people actually listen to what you're saying, and then to actually take action.
Yeah.
Right. To actually make that decision, and then to surround themselves with a supportive group that can help hold them accountable, because that's the process.
Yes.
Make the decision, then get around people who will help support that decision.
Yes.
Through accountability and collaboration. Right. So if there's anything you could leave them with, what would that be? And then one more question after that.
Okay. Thank you. It's been a joy.
Mm.
You can tell I love to talk about this and
Yes.
to share it. It's really fulfilling. Thank you for listening. The person listening to this, I really appreciate your time and attention. And I feel that you're listening to this, even if it's in a different, you're listening to this in the future. I can already receive. So thank you so much for this experience. And one thing that I'd love to just continue to encourage is the curiosity aspect of this, and the awareness of the different dimension. Like, it's been a huge transformation in my life to go from thinking, a space of thinking and going through life like there's a problem to solve through thinking versus taking that attention back inward and being.
Mm-hmm.
And then the choosing of the being. There's a different, completely different life possible from that choosing of the being through the free will universe, through the experience of this present moment. And what is extremely gratifying about this is that I know this is the next huge evolution of human consciousness, human beings. So us having this conversation is a product of that. Those in the past that have had this conversation, that have inspired us, our teachers, our guides, our teachers, all of them, to them I say thank you as well for creating the energy behind this wave, for us, all of us continuing to put energy towards this new movement, this new way of being for the human experience. Because what we're doing, and obviously the result of that, the disease, the disconnection, the trauma, the relationship with our planet, all of this, we're evolving in order to heal that, and we're going to be able to receive it, and it's already incredibly glorious.
You know, my purpose statement?
I would love to hear it.
To make thriving standard.
Let's make thriving standard.
And we do that through essentially what we're doing right now, inspiring other people through our stories, and to help them see that the change is possible. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, your transformation from 300 pounds to what you're doing now is,
it's a giggle. Like, it's a proper laugh. Like,
yeah.
To be that person, to jump into that frame of mind and to see who I've become and am doing, it's like, what?
It's wild,
it's an alien,
right? Like, completely different person.
Totally.
So last question, well, kind of 1.5 more questions. What is it that you're most excited for right now?
What I just shared.
Okay.
Like,
that's what I figured. That's pretty fucking exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And to be contributing to that, and to again, the receive the beauty that it is to be contributing to life. Because where else am I going to feel that but in myself? So contributing to that bigger picture, obviously the healing that I still need to do, the ways that I get in my way show up. And I embrace that now as a different relationship with anything that's an obstacle within me. Embrace the everything that we've espoused is the practice, and that is the showing up and being in communities like this. So I see communities like what we're doing, like what you're doing, like what I'm doing, as the greatest potential that human beings have ever experienced on Earth, and that we're a part of it. And how does it get any better than that?
How fucking cool.
Yeah.
And when you upgrade yourself, when you work through your trauma or whatever, that elevates the collective consciousness.
Everything.
Like, everything starts within you.
Everything.
So the change that you want to see in the world, don't complain about it. It's nothing external. Fix internal issues first. And that's what I came to realize, because as a coach, a former CrossFit coach, I would try to tell people a lot of things that they didn't necessarily want to hear on how to fix things that they may not have viewed as problems. So I noticed that I wasn't getting any results by simply telling these things. And one day when I was high on weed, I came to this realization. I had this common phrase that I would say is, I'm trying to tell people. Like, somebody would say something about, organic food being better for you, whatever. It's like just something very basic. I was like, I know, I'm trying to tell people. And then this came to me when I was high, and I was like, maybe that's the problem. Maybe me trying to tell people is the problem. So if that's the problem, what could be the solution? And I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, nobody wants to be told what to do. They want to feel like the decision is their own. They want to feel inspired to make a change. How does inspiration happen? Inspiration comes through leading by example, through seeing this change that is possible, that there is another level, or that you can go through this valley of whatever your trauma is and come out on the other side thriving. And so I was like, okay, instead of just talking about it, I'm just going to document my lifestyle, interview people with inspiring stories, and through that, we're going to make thriving standard by just being ourselves fully.
Exactly. Let the rest take care of itself.
That's the game. Where can people find more about you and your work?
I love that your brand is called the
Captain's
Lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I was telling you before this, my name is Jeff, and I had some friends in college start calling me Jefe, Jefe.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just a Spanish version of Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that. And then I left and I went to a different university and I got Jefe. Friends randomly calling me Jefe again. Part of my personality. That now I realize that in Spanish, Jefe is boss or leader or chief, right? So what I took that to mean is distinguishing oneself by being ourselves, being the leader of our life. So it's the captain as well.
Become the captain of your own life. That's, yep.
Jefe Living is my brand. So owning it, taking responsibility for it, healing, thriving, contributing, all of this. And so you can find what I'm about. A lot of what I teach is around meditation, around yoga practice, around these things the work I've done has been really to create, to give people the possibility of bridging that gap from intellectual to experiential. So that for me is creating a meditation practice, creating a course that drives experientially. So you can find me in my website, jefeliving.com, Jefe living.com.
Do you have social media?
Yes, Jefe AF.
Jefe AF.
Yes. So that's a combination of Jefe, and also I had the moniker as Jeff as fuck when I would do my thing.
Okay. We are going to get into this right now.
Okay.
At my in-person men's retreat that happened, it's October now, so last month, the immersion, we had, and I'm having him on the podcast, so I'm not going to go too deep into his story because I want him to be able to share it himself. But we had a guy named Carlos come to the immersion. He used to weigh over 500 pounds. Currently, when he attended the immersion, he was somewhere around 290. So he had already lost a significant amount of weight. And he was still struggling through that identity and accepting himself and just really being himself in this really new version of who he was. And through the work of Chase Tollison and Dave Robinson, primarily through their story work at the immersion, he was able to have such a tremendous breakthrough that on the last day of the immersion, he came up with this catchphrase, and we called it hashtag Carlos as fuck. So Carlos AF. And he's been using that like as this new totem, essentially, like I am allowed to be me. I am Carlos as fuck. And he was like fucking pumped about it. So the fact that you just said that, similar journeys, right?
Yeah.
It's, dude, yeah, wow. that was a perfect way to close things off.
Shout out to Carlos.
Shout out to Carlos.
Carlos as fuck.
Carlos as fuck. He's going to be coming on the podcast. And actually, would you like to host, as part of my men's community that I mentioned, I do monthly masterminds, usually with guest speakers who I've had on the podcast. Would you like to host
Sign me up.
This month's mastermind?
What? Yes.
Whatever
day.
It's a Sunday sometime.
Yeah. Okay.
And if not this month, next month, we'll figure it out. But I would love for you to host a Yin Yoga / meditation session for the crew.
I would love that. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah. Received.
Awesome. Chief Jefe, thank you for coming on the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for listening.
See y'all later.